There are moments in life when silence is not weakness, it is divine strategy. When heaven itself leans in, not to broadcast your next step, but to conceal it. And if you are hearing this right now, it may be because you are not just anyone. You are chosen. Not perfect, not flawless, but marked, set apart, watched, prepared in ways you don't even fully understand. You've been talking too much, not just with your mouth, but with your energy, your reactions, your explanations. Trying to make people understand what God is doing in your life. Trying to defend what was never meant to be explained. But hear this clearly. What God is building in you right now cannot survive public exposure. Not yet. There's a reason seeds grow in darkness. There's a reason the most powerful transformations happen in hidden places. Because when something carries divine weight, it attracts attention, both good and dangerous. Not everyone clapping for you is for you. Not everyone asking questions deserves answers. And not every open door is sent by God. You feel it, don't you? That tension, that shift, that uncomfortable pull away from people, from noise, from environments that once felt normal. You thought something was wrong with you. You thought maybe you were becoming distant, cold, disconnected. But what if this is God separating you for protection? Because what's coming next in your life requires precision. And precision demands silence. Loose words create leaks. And leaks weaken power. You cannot carry a heavy calling with a loose mouth. Every time you explain your plans to the wrong ears, you invite confusion. Every time you announce what God whispered, you risk interference. Not because God is weak, but because He is intentional. He gives revelation in measures, and not everyone is meant to handle what you carry. You are in a season where obedience matters more than validation, where discipline matters more than applause, where silence matters more than expression. And yes, God is not pleased with how casually you've been treating what He gave you. Not because He hates you, but because He entrusted you with something sacred, and you've been exposing it. You've been trying to turn divine direction into public discussion. But this next move, this next step, must be a deadly secret. Not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Because there are battles you don't fight with noise. You win them with stillness, with focus, with alignment. There are people watching you who don't need updates. They need distance. There are forces studying your patterns, waiting for emotional reactions, waiting for you to slip into over-explanation, waiting for you to reveal what should remain hidden. But you're not the same anymore. You're being trained to move differently, to speak less, but mean more, to act quietly, but impact loudly, to trust God deeply, even when no one else understands what you're doing. Because the truth is, chosen ones often walk alone before they walk in authority. They are misunderstood before they are recognized. They are tested before they are elevated. And right now, you are in that testing ground. Every urge to explain yourself is a test. Every moment you feel the need to prove something is a test. Every time you want to react, defend, or justify, He is watching. Will you trust Him enough to stay silent? Will you trust His timing more than your emotions? Will you protect what He placed inside you, even when it costs you relationships, attention, and comfort? Because not everything needs a response, and not everyone deserves access. There is power in restraint. There is authority in silence. There is protection in secrecy. You are not hiding. You are being hidden. There is a difference. When God hides you, it is not rejection. It is preparation. It is incubation before manifestation. It is sharpening before release. So close your mouth. Guard your spirit. Watch your steps. Move with intention. Because what's coming next in your life will not just surprise people. It will shake them. But it will only happen if you learn this now. Silence is not your weakness. It is your weapon. There is a divine instruction echoing in your spirit, and it is not loud, yet it is undeniable. It is the call to be still, to restrain your tongue, to step back from the urge to explain everything unfolding in your life. You have been moving in a pattern where every thought becomes a conversation, every plan becomes an announcement, every shift becomes something you feel the need to justify. But now, something higher is interrupting that pattern. There's a sacred weight on this moment, a seriousness that cannot be ignored, because what you are carrying is no longer ordinary. You were not chosen to live carelessly with your words. Words carry life, but they also carry exposure. And exposure, when it is premature, can damage what God is forming. You have been entrusted with glimpses of what is ahead, small revelations, quiet directions, and instead of holding them close, you have allowed them to spill into spaces that were never prepared to receive them. Not everyone who listens understands, and not everyone who understands is aligned with your purpose. There are ears that hear you, but do not carry your best interest. And there are hearts that receive your words, but twist their meaning in ways you cannot control. This is why the command is so direct. Close your mouth, not out of fear, but out of obedience. Not because you are weak, but because you are being trained in strength. Silence is not emptiness. It is discipline. It is awareness. It is knowing that not every moment requires your voice, and not every situation deserves your explanation. You have spent too much energy trying to be understood by people who were never assigned to understand you. There's a difference between being open and being exposed. You thought transparency meant sharing everything, but wisdom is knowing what to hold back. There are things God whispers that are meant only for you in this season. When you release them too quickly, you interrupt the process. You invite opinions where there should only be obedience. You create noise around something that was meant to grow quietly. Pay attention to how often you feel the urge to speak. That urgency is not always from a place of truth. Sometimes it is driven by insecurity, by the need for validation, by the desire to feel seen and supported. But your calling does not depend on people clapping for you. It does not grow stronger because others know about it. In fact, the more sacred the assignment, the more it requires protection. You're being taught to move differently now. To think before you speak, to pause before you reveal, to sit with what God is doing instead of rushing to describe it. There is power in holding things close and allowing them to develop without interference. The moment you learn to master your tongue, you begin to master your direction. Because when your words are controlled, your focus becomes sharper, your discernment becomes clearer, and your steps become more intentional. And right now, the instruction is not complicated. It is simply difficult because it goes against your habits, against your emotions, against your desire to be heard. But this is where transformation begins, in the quiet decision to say less even when everything in you wants to say more. There is a shift happening around you that feels unfamiliar, almost unsettling, as if the world you once moved through with ease is slowly pulling away from your reach. Conversations feel different, connections feel thinner, and the spaces that once brought comfort now carry a quiet sense of disconnection. You have questioned it, wondering if something is wrong within you, if you're becoming distant, if you're losing parts of yourself that once made you feel whole. But what you are experiencing is not loss. It is separation with purpose, a deliberate repositioning that is not meant to harm you, but to prepare you. God does not isolate without intention. When He begins to remove you from certain environments, it is because those places can no longer support what He is building inside you. Growth demands new conditions, and sometimes that means stepping away from what is familiar so something greater can take root. You are not being abandoned. You are being redirected. The discomfort you feel is the tension between who you were and who you are becoming. And that tension is necessary because transformation is never comfortable. You have been surrounded by noise for so long that silence now feels unnatural. You have been accustomed to constant input, constant validation, constant presence from others. And now there are moments where it feels like everything has gone quiet. Fewer messages, fewer invitations, fewer voices speaking into your life. It almost feels like absence, but in reality, it is space. Space for clarity, space for focus, space for you to hear what was always being drowned out. In this hidden place, you are being refined. Your thoughts are being reshaped, your priorities are being realigned, your vision is being sharpened. Things that once distracted you no longer hold the same power, and people who once influenced you no longer carry the same weight. It is not because you have become better than anyone else, but because your assignment requires a different level of awareness. You are being trained to discern, to recognize what aligns and what is not, to understand that not every connection is meant to continue into your next season. Separation often feels like rejection when you do not understand its purpose. You may have felt overlooked, left out, even forgotten in certain moments, questioning why doors that once opened easily now remain closed. But those closed doors are not punishment. They are protection. There are places you're no longer meant to enter, conversations you're no longer meant to engage in, paths you're no longer meant to walk. What feels like restriction is actually guidance, quietly steering you away from what could disrupt your growth. This season is asking something deeper from you. It is asking you to become comfortable in your own presence, to find strength without constant support, to trust without visible reassurance. It is shaping your independence while strengthening your dependence on God. The fewer voices around you, the clearer His voice becomes. The less you rely on external affirmation, the more grounded you become in internal conviction. You are being hidden for a reason, not to be forgotten, but to be developed, not to be overlooked, but to be prepared. There's a work happening within you that cannot be rushed, cannot be performed in front of an audience, cannot be understood by those who are not walking this path. And while it may feel lonely at times, there is a quiet strength forming in that loneliness, a resilience that cannot be taught in crowded spaces, a depth that only comes from walking. There is a danger you have underestimated, not because you are careless, but because it often comes disguised as something harmless. It feels natural to speak, to share, to release what is forming inside you, especially when you're excited, especially when you believe you are simply expressing truth. But not every truth is meant to be spoken immediately. Timing is everything, and when timing is ignored, even something pure can become vulnerable. You have been revealing things too early. Ideas, plans, directions, small confirmations you felt deep within, and each time you spoke them out, something shifted. The energy around those plans changed. Doubt entered. Confusion followed. What once felt clear suddenly felt uncertain. That is not coincidence. Exposure invites influence, and influence is not always aligned with your purpose. Every word you release creates an opening, and not every opening is safe. There are people who listen not to support, but to measure. People who hear not to understand, but to compare. And even those with good intentions can unintentionally disrupt what God is doing in your life. Their opinions, their fears, their limitations can become noise that clouds your direction. You begin to question what was once certain, not because it changed, but because you allowed too many voices into something that required silence. Spiritual power weakens when it is constantly explained. The more you try to define what God is doing, the more you reduce it to human understanding. There are things meant to remain between you and Him until the right moment arrives. When you rush to share them, you pull them out of their protective covering and place them into environments that cannot sustain them. It is like planting a seed and then digging it up every day to show others that it exists. You have felt this before. That moment when you spoke too soon and instantly felt a shift inside you. A quiet discomfort, a subtle regret, a sense that something was not supposed to be released yet. That feeling was not random. It was awareness. It was the recognition that you stepped ahead of the process. But instead of learning from it, you kept repeating the pattern, convincing yourself that expression was always better than restraint. There are forces you do not see that pay attention to what you say. Patterns are observed, weaknesses are noted, and reactions are studied. When you speak too much, you reveal more than your plans. You reveal your timing, your emotions, your uncertainties. You make yourself predictable, and predictability can be used against you. This is why discipline in your words is not just about wisdom, it is about protection. Not everything requires confirmation from others. Not everything needs to be validated through conversation. Some things gain strength in silence. Some directions become clearer when they are not constantly discussed. When you hold something close, it has space to develop without pressure, without interference, without unnecessary attention. You are learning that restraint is not suppression. It is control. It is knowing that just because something exists within you does not mean it must immediately exist outside of you. There is a time to speak, and there is a time to remain quiet. And right now, you're in a season where silence is guarding what speech could easily expose, where holding back is strengthening what oversharing would weaken, where wisdom is teaching you that what is kept in secrecy can grow with power, while what is exposed too early can lose its direction. There is a different kind of strength being formed within you now, one that does not announce itself, one that does not seek attention or approval. It moves quietly, almost unnoticed, yet it carries a weight that cannot be ignored. This is the strength that comes from discipline, from restraint, from learning how to operate without the need to be seen or understood. You're being trained to move in a way that feels unfamiliar, because it requires you to trust what is unseen more than what is visible. You have spent so much time measuring progress by external response, by how people react, by how quickly things unfold in front of others. But now, the measurement is different. It is internal. It is about alignment, about obedience, about whether your steps match what has been placed inside you rather than what is expected around you. And this shift requires you to let go of the need to explain yourself, to release the habit of seeking reassurance through conversation. Moving in secrecy does not mean you are hiding out of fear. It means you are protecting out of wisdom. There is a difference between shrinking back and stepping back. One is driven by doubt, the other by intention. You are not being called to disappear, but to become precise, to move with awareness, to act with purpose, to understand that not every step needs to be witnessed in order to be effective. There is power in doing things quietly. When your actions are not constantly observed, they are not constantly judged. When your plans are not publicly known, they are not easily disrupted. You gain the ability to build without pressure, to adjust without criticism, to grow without interference. What develops in silence often carries a depth that cannot be achieved in the presence of constant noise. You are learning to trust timing in a way you never have before, to wait without rushing, to prepare without announcing, to act without explaining. This kind of discipline sharpens you. It strengthens your focus. It removes distractions. It centers you in a way that makes your steps more intentional. You begin to notice how much energy was once wasted on unnecessary conversations, on explaining details that did not need to be shared, on reacting to opinions that did not deserve your attention. Authority does not always speak loudly. In fact, true authority often speaks less. It does not feel the need to prove itself because it is rooted in certainty. You are stepping into that kind of authority where your confidence comes not from what others see, but from what you know has been placed within you. And that confidence allows you to move without constant validation, to act without hesitation, to remain steady even when others do not understand your direction. There will be moments where silence feels heavy, where the urge to speak rises strongly, where you want to explain, to clarify, to be heard. But those are the moments that define your growth. Choosing silence in those moments is not easy, but it is powerful. It reinforces your discipline. It strengthens your control. It reminds you that you are no longer driven by impulse, but by purpose. You are becoming someone who does not need to announce every move to make it meaningful. Someone who understands that the quiet path often leads to the strongest outcomes. Someone who can carry something significant without feeling the need to display it. Because you know that when the time is right, what has been built in silence will speak with a force that words could never fully capture.